Vladimir Putin announced today that Russia has just called on 300,000 reservists to join the war in Ukraine. In this video, we'll go into more depth about what that really means. I'm going to be honest with you guys here, I'm very pro-Ukraine, but this is going to be very hard for the Ukrainian troops to adjust to. It's estimated that Russia sent 200,000 troops in at the beginning of the war, and is estimated to only have 150,000 or 120,000 left on the front, if not less. This is going to sharply increase the amount of pressure Russia can put on Ukraine, and it will make it very hard for it to defeat. Russia evacuated the Kyiv front, and then they were beat back at the first Kharkiv counterattack. They lost the Battle of Seversk, and they've been stuck grinding on Bakhmut for over a month, but it seems like the recent Kharkiv counterattack was the final straw for Russia. I think Russia isn't going to reinvade the north of the country. They had a year to set up logistics for that and it still failed. But I'm worried they're going to make more gains in the south and the east. Here are 3 scenarios I think are plausible for the coming months in the conflict. I'll explain some of the more optimistic and more pessimistic ones. One thing will stay consistent over all the scenarios is that Kherson will be liberated. With how Ukraine is pummeling the bridges, there's no effective way for troops to get to the West Bank. And with that, let's start. Scenario 1. Russian logistics render the new troops useless. This is a scenario everyone wishes would happen. Even though they had been preparing for this war back in March 2021, the logistics were a massive thing holding Russia back, and honestly would allow Ukraine to organize time and fight back. They had 40-mile military convoys stuck with no fuel for days at a time, but Ukraine didn't have the equipment to strike them. But now with HIMARS, they can hit the ones that are closer. Many people have been pushing for Ukraine to get ATACMs, which would really help in this part. Russia has been losing air superiority near a lot of regions of Ukraine, and I don't think the mobilization is going to change that. If the West delivers planes, or what's left of the Ukrainian Air Force is able to bomb or damage these convoys, that could help tremendously. I do think that HIMARS are going to help with these. These troop convoys are very visible from satellite images. Here's a map of HIMARS range over some Ukrainian cities, but in the red in this map is ATACMs as well. Overall, Ukraine has the ability to strike some of these, and if they play their cards right, they can severely damage the Russian advance. Russia has made it illegal for factories to resist making military equipment if they ask, so I wouldn't be surprised if Russia is running out of armored vehicles and other transport supplies. If they are low on these, mobilizing these troops isn't that good of an idea. They won't be very mobile, and it will be very hard for them to get to where they go without these vehicles. I think this scenario ultimately comes down to what the West does. If they're able to arm Ukraine even harder and get them ATACMs, fighter and bomber planes, Ukraine could have a shot here. Russia's main advantage in this war has been sheer firepower so far, so if Ukraine has equal firepower, it comes down to who is the most motivated. And considering reports coming out of Russia recently, Ukraine seems to be winning in that part. Scenario 2. The troops are pretty effective and apply a lot of pressure on Ukraine. I hate to say this, but this is probably the most likely scenario. Having to suddenly deal with 3 times the amount of troops you were dealing with before is hard to adapt to for any nation. I think if the troops have decent morale and work together, the Donetsk Oblast would be captured further. Like I said in the intro, Kherson will remain Ukrainian, and there's a small chance Ukraine surrenders after taking Kherson, but don't get it confused. Ukraine is not just going to surrender now that they know this. I think they will watch how the troops change the war over the next few weeks and respond accordingly. Don't forget that there have been times in this war where Russians were 10 kilometers away from Kyiv. Russian paratroopers were down the block from Zelensky's house and were advancing several hundred kilometers every day, but they never gave up and pushed the Russians to where they are today. What is most likely in my head is something like what happened from May to July, where Russian forces slowly grind through cities after hard fights until they take the Donetsk Oblast. I hate to say this, but I wouldn't be surprised if there were battles of Sloviansk and Kramatorsk. Overall, we don't know the new troops' combat capability, but we don't know the true extent of Ukrainian will yet, and anything really can happen. Scenario 3. Russian reserves are very motivated and well equipped. This is a very scary option and is grounded in reality. Since Russia controls the media, the Russians have portrayed themselves as swooping into Ukraine and blasting the fascists back tens of thousands of kilometers and liberating the republics. And now that they're a part of Russia, the fascists are back attacking them and we need people to defend it. This is clearly far from reality, but it could be good motivation to the new troops. If they are very combat capable and Russia gets them new supplies, the gains they make in Ukraine will sharply increase. I think it may even go past the Donetsk Oblast towards the city of Dnipro. I don't think they will reinvade the north of the country. A possible encirclement of Kharkiv could happen, but I think that's very unlikely. Zaporizhia would probably be taken, and possibly Dnipro too. This option is relatively plausible, but I think scenario 2 is more likely. In the end, we can only hope that Ukraine will persevere, and so far they've done a great job of it. So I talked about optimistic and pessimistic options here, but to all my realists out there, we don't really know what's going to happen. Many people believe that Ukraine was going to fall in 3 days, but their sheer willpower and fire in their soul allowed them to get to where they are now. They could lose a lot of territory to these new troops, or they could fight back with vigor and reclaim some land. At the end of the day, we don't know how Russian logistics are going to play out, and we don't know how effective the reserves are going to be. We don't know their morale levels or how well they will fight. We don't know how the West will respond and the weapons they may give Ukraine. The truth is, we just don't know. But we can hope, and I hope that every single Ukrainian fighter, fallen or alive, will make it to eternal peace by fighting for what they believe in. Thank you guys for watching. Wow, that was the longest video I've ever made. If you're new here, I make daily updates about the Ukraine conflict, and if you feel like supporting me, I just launched a Patreon. The link will be in the description below. You can chip in as little as $1 every month to $5 every month. Every patron will have their name at the end of my videos. If you're in the second or third tier, I'll give you a verbal shout out at the end. The $5 tier also gets to see my videos on Saturday and Sunday early. This is in no way necessary, everyone will still get the same amount of content, and just watching the videos is amazing support on its own. See you guys.